My name is Galen Charlton. I'm the implementation and IT manager at the Equinox Open Library Initiative. And with me is Rohlfs, the senior implementation project manager, who many of you have worked with, particularly once you recently joined Missouri Evergreen. We are honored to be here at the first Missouri Evergreen Users Conference. And what we will be talking about is two things. I will be leading off with a discussion and explanation of Equinox's role as a partner of the Missouri Evergreen, and go through what we do for you, and describe the things that you can do to make even more use of our services. And then after I'm finished, Erica will pick up the megaphone and go through a discussion about how we work in partnership with Missouri Evergreen to go through the process of adding new libraries to your ever-growing consortium. By the way, one thing that all of you should keep in mind is at the moment, you are the fastest growing Evergreen consortium among Equinox's customer base, and quite probably the fastest growing consortium in the world. So I will do it dangerously, try this clicker to advance the slide. Hey, maybe your services will be needed.
Ah, okay. Of course, I stepped away, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Like I said, I'm here with Erica, but it's important to know that there are many people at Equinox who are actively working with you. And in fact, two of my colleagues, Andrea Snyman and Jennifer Weston, are attending remotely. So, and you will be hearing from Jennifer Weston during the presentation tomorrow. So, what is Equinox? We're a nonprofit organization, a 501c3, and our mission is to help libraries and other cultural heritage institutions use and enhance open source software in furtherance of your own mission. We started as a for-profit entity called Equinox Software around 2007 as an offshoot of the Georgia Public Library Services creation of Evergreen. And since then, we've been working to help spread Evergreen across the world. Random trivia about Equinox is we've had involvement not just in Georgia, the U.S. state, but we also hosted Evergreen system for a set of libraries in the country of Georgia. So there's your random trivia. So our roots are in Evergreen, but since then we have expanded to provide some services for other open source products and projects, including COPA, and more recently discovery systems such as ViewFind and Aspen Discovery. I won't go into particular detail, although if any of you want to see any of these systems in action, particularly Aspen, happy to do an impromptu demo whenever an opportunity presents itself. But suffice it to say that what we do offers opportunities to Missouri Evergreen that go beyond Evergreen, but that's for the future. For right now, I'll be focusing on the here and now. So what is Equinox's role? So since 2019, we've provided an integrated set of services, hosting, support, implementations and migrations, training, consulting, and development. And I'll go through each of these in turn, both to explain what we're doing and hopefully provide some context from the mysterious emails from us. If the other board members may be able to circulate it. So starting first with hosting. We run the servers and we host the Evergreen software for Missouri Evergreen, including both the test and production systems. And by the way, the tester system is potentially an opportunity available to you that you may not be fully aware of. Now, all of you who recently joined the Missouri Evergreen are quite familiar with the tester system because that's where your test loads took place. But it is something that is also available in conjunction with the Missouri Evergreen policy about use of the test system, to give you a place to try things without risking anything about the production system. So, for example, if you are unsure about this new policy you're setting up for a operative things item, the tester system is something that you could use as a safe place to try it out. But then again, in conjunction with Missouri Evergreen policy, since the test system also gets used for other projects, most notably, but not exclusively, the add-on migrations. So as part of hosting, our responsibility is to keep the lights on 24/7. And of course, there's a difference between now and 1990. In 1990, if you had an OPAC, you could probably get away with having that OPAC literally keep the largest hours and be turned off at the end of the day. In 2023, we have this little service that some of you may have heard of called Overdrive. Yeah, so suffice it to say, keeping SIP2 authentication up at 2 a.m. in the morning is equally as important as keeping the public account. In addition to that, we do the traditional IT service things, keeping the backups, maintaining and updating capacity to host Evergreen as your consortium grows, and also upgrades. And upgrades cover two areas. First, every month, we do a maintenance update, which generally is about applying bug fixes. It will include applying the community release, if there has been one, as well as doing additional bug fixes that we call backports to either give you fast access to the bug fixes before a community release, or in some cases to deal with things that may be particular to Missouri Evergreen's situation. So that happens every month, in the middle of every month, like a clockwork. And one of the things that we do in the conjunction with that is provide release notes about what's going into the monthly update. And later on in the slides, one of the links you'll see there will direct you to where you can get at such resources. By the way, these slides are not yet uploaded into Shed, but they will be shortly after this presentation, so that you can remember how it is that Galen and Charlton managed when we produce a slide deck, including that picture. So in addition to the monthly maintenance update, there are also the annual big upgrades. The timing has shifted a bit, but nowadays we're targeting the early spring. The most recent upgrade to 3.9 was in February. And because Evergreen is a fast growing product, we take a slightly different approach with the major upgrades. And the big difference is that we do it in the test system first and give you an opportunity, as well as the NE board and staff, to go through all of the workflows, test the things out, figure out how to grapple with any of the new features, and prepare your explanations to the circulation desk, saying, yes, that button has moved by 5 pixels yet again. But of course, more seriously, the Evergreen Snap interface has gone through quite a lot of change in the recent years. So, there is, in fact, a very important matter of staff training, both provided by Equinox, by Missouri Evergreen, as well as what you set up for your own use. But then once the test period is done, we do the upgrade in production, and generally we set it up so that the upgrade happens with minimal downtime, generally 5 to 10 minutes at most in the late evening, and everybody's happy except for the patron. The donation is something out from Libby. And again, this is something that happens every year, and we're a very firm believer in encouraging all of our customers to stay current with them. Sometimes we run into situations where, like most recently, we're basically helping somebody upgrade from, I think about 3.6 in one fell swoop, and we can do that. But this bit I said about internal staff training, that can be even more time consuming, but that's actually a big job. That's why we encourage stay current. So we don't just host the software for you. We answer questions because, well, Evergreen is a big system and a complicated system, and I think it's fair to say that there's no iOS that is self-explanatory. So one of the benefits of your arrangement with Equinox is you don't have to go through Wiki for each and every ticket. Every member of the Missouri Evergreen is entitled to directly contact Equinox for support requests. Currently, there are about 150 support contacts registered with us, and each library or each library system is entitled to name up to 3 support contacts. Now, the reason that we do it that way is to avoid running into situations where we're not sure if somebody is actually authorized to speak on behalf of a library. But one thing I will say about that, if something is completely broken or the system is down, you don't need to be fussy about support contacts. Anybody can contact us report such an issue. But what do our friendly neighborhood support people do? Well, they answer questions. So if you have a question about upgraded functionality, or if you need help doing something that you don't do commonly, our support team can answer questions. We can help create reports. I should mention, we also do have reporting experts in the Missouri Evergreen users community. And we can do things like in conjunction with our training department, provide services to get new staff up to speed. And this is something particularly important if you get new directors coming in or new branch managers, the like. And then we'll be talking a little more about our support services and some of the numbers today. Also, give you a secrets of how to make our support team leader even busier. So another big focus of ours is implementations. Like I said, Missouri Evergreen is a fast growing consortium. So we provide a set of services to bring new libraries on, including taking their data from the previous system and mapping it, helping get policies set up, both in terms of getting them on the Evergreen, as well as helping the operators align them with the ME policy guidelines, and doing other configurations, like helping get the OPAC design branded. But unfortunately for me, I can leave this to the real life of Erica to talk about this during the second half of the presentation. All right, so another big focus of ours is training. So we have Equinox EDU, which is our name for our comprehensive training services, as well as our training resources. So this includes both the training we provide for add-ons, but also free videos that are available to you, written resources, community updates, and the training sessions commissioned for Missouri Evergreen. During the past 3 years or so, most of our training has necessarily been done via video conference. But we are thrilled to say that as of this year, we are back on the road, back visiting Missouri Evergreen operators for their migration training. Another thing we do falls into the category of consulting and special projects. So some of them are around the area of kind of information technology concerns. So one of the things we're working on right now is doing some reporting to help track down stray social security numbers and so on, the patron data, so that we can take those out and help be in compliance with the new ME patron privacy policy. Another project that we have going on, and you will hear more about this from Jennifer Weston tomorrow, is a review of your Evergreen staff permissions, structure, and a cleanup. Remember, Evergreen is a complicated system, and sometimes the thing you have to do is to take the complexity that has accreted over time and bring it back to a place of, if not simplicity, at least simple, more simple, shall we say. Other things that we do, include helping review certification policies and doing things to simplify them, both as far as Evergreen itself is concerned, but also, we can provide advice on how to make things easier for developers and their patrons. And of course, a big focus has been doing things to help organize whole Evergreen classes so that they interact better with the courier service and reduce the time it takes to fill whole Evergreen class, particularly for materials that need to travel across the state. But the consulting is largely what you request of us and what you choose to make of it, because Equinox as an organization that has strong technologists and strong librarians can help with many facets. We're not just an IT hacker shop. We can also help deal with some of the more administrative issues that you run into. So another thing we do is development services. So we are an open source shop. Everything we write gets contributed back to the originating projects. And one of the avenues for that is sponsored development, where a customer of ours pays us to implement a feature and put it into Evergreen. And Missouri Evergreen's big contribution to the Evergreen community to date has been, helping fund the simple reports development that became available to you in 3.9. And you hugely, deserve an executive, pat on the back And a round of applause for yourselves for choosing to make the investment in open source in that way, so that not only you benefit, but the entire Evergreen community benefits as well. So,
Yeah, thank you.
but there's also some development that we do that's kind of behind the scenes, because in addition to stuff that others sponsor that you get the benefit of when you upgrade, we also do things to fix bugs and so on as part of the community. And one thing I'm super excited about is we recently hired a developer who has strong accessibility experience, and who will be working with us and the community to make Evergreen easier to use and easier to use for people who have things like printed or visual disabilities, where the software can be made to provide less of a barrier to those people. And that applies both to patrons and to your staff. So, but I'm hugely looking forward to offering accessibility that will be coming out that way. So let's go ahead and talk a bit about what's been going on in the past year or so. So in 2022, you've had 3 new member operators join: Rohlfs, and Charlton. The simple reports feature was released in 2022 as well. And you all have in fact been contacting our support. So 546 support tickets open and 554 closed. Obviously, some of the ones off the coast were hangovers from 2021. And of course, last year was the big upgrade to Evergreen 3.8, where the LPAC did more than just move some funds by 5 pixels. It introduced a whole new look and feel. Then for 2023 so far, we have we had our first go live, Mississippi County. And we have 3 more migrations as stated for this year: St. Joseph, Jordan, and Morgan County.
Don't forget Nevada. They're squeezed in there too.
Okay. I thought it was missing.
Yeah.
So, I will be updating this slide. And you haven't been a slouch about opening support tickets in this quarter, so 149. And of course, the upgrade to Evergreen 3.9. So, like I said, you've been growing quite quickly. Since 2019, we've brought in 15 library systems. At least 2 service outlets, and then of course, since many of you have been taking advantage of the grant from the state library, lots and lots and lots of forward to pick up Roberts.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and by the way, I'll be really curious to hear how your patrons have been responding to this. And I want you to give a shout out to a group who's probably not here because Vicky told them not to come. They literally went live last week, but at least an extension, please give a round of applause to Mississippi. Yeah. So in general, both in terms of our migration services and our consulting services, one of the areas that we've been focusing on and working with the Missouri Evergreen board and with Liz and her predecessor as the Missouri Evergreen cataloger is various things, and I shouldn't forget the cataloging committee, is various things to help improve the data in Missouri Evergreen in conjunction with the huge amount of work that you've been doing to up your cataloging policy game and your cataloging training again. So that includes many rounds of bibliographic deduplication, but also working with ME to tune and adjust the deduping algorithm. We've been processing authority loads, from archive since our inception, but also engaging in the various data, cleanup projects. And as we speak, deleted about 25,000 duplicate authority records this morning. And only about 90,000 or so which you go taking place over the next week. So yeah, clean data, happy cats. I will leave it to you to decide whether I'm referring to catalogers or themes. All right, so how to use Equinox. This is the section where I talk about tips and tricks to give more work to my colleagues. Also to me. So this may seem whoa.
Sorry, no.
Okay. So some of the things that you can do is customer support. And one thing to keep in mind is you are not paying us by any support ticket. If you have a question, if you have a problem, please do not hesitate to contact us. You're not alone. Of course, in addition to the Missouri Evergreen community, we're available to answer questions. We provide a lot of the training and webinars. So this includes things like a video library that you can get into, as part of onboarding user relations staff. And then, of course, the consulting and data projects. And one thing to mention, particularly about the data projects, is there can be opportunities both for projects that are specific to a library, or can affect the ME as a whole. So, of course, if you do have questions about the scope of it, you can always consult with the ME staff and board. So, contacting support. This slide may feel really basic, but it's important to both keep it in mind and make sure as you turn over your staff that they remember how to reach us. We have a variety of ways to contact us. There's the support Equinox oli.org domain or website where you can fill out a form to open a ticket. You can email tickets to us. Or you can call us, and in particular, for a significant system add-on issue, calling us is the best way to get a hold of us. Though we also do monitor things and deal with the system add-on issues without prompting. And of course, in case of doubt, or if you're uncertain whether this is too silly or too trivial to contact us board, you can always get guidance from your peers at other Missouri Evergreen operators, as well as via the ME board and staff. But this is something to keep in mind, that if you don't, as a library director, remember ever opening a ticket with us, don't be afraid to do that, and it doesn't hurt every year to make sure that you know who your designated support contacts are, and that we at Equinox are up to date. And by the way, if you have things like a support contact is out for a 6-month leave or so on, it is just fine to swap your support contact slots around. Just open a ticket with us to say these are being swapped in, these are being swapped out. And one of the things we do try to fight is the sense that okay, just because Evergreen has always behaved in a certain way, that isn't quite ideal, that will forever be like that. So every now and again, you think to yourself, what are these little annoyances? And decide, are there things that I've just gotten used to that maybe I shouldn't accept? Those these sorts of the things that we want to know about. Often a support to take it, solve the issue for you, or at the very least, knowing what your pain points are, help guide the development we do. So if you take absolutely nothing else from my presentation, please take this away. Please do not suffer in silence. If something's been affecting you, contact Equinox support. Talk about it among the community. Talk about it with any staff and board, but do not suffer in silence. So, what are some specific examples of things support that can do with you? And this is just a quick list. Set up new staff accounts, helping set up new shelving locations and policies, dealing with SIP 2, running reports, answering questions. Going fine free. Our support team has a set of tools so that they have at hand to help you deal with changing your policies and figuring out what to do with the existing clients. We can help merge different accounts. We can help with setting up new service locations and pickup lockers. We can help adjust notices. But we can also do things like, let's say, as is happening at one of your member libraries, you're closing a branch over 2 weeks for remodeling. Equinox can help you get through that in terms of marking the branches closed and temporarily not dealing with order pickups. Because that's one of the things we're here for, is helping you do the things that only strike you occasionally. Or is if you're remodeling your branch every year, should probably fire your general. And again, one of the things to keep in mind is Equinox is a company of both strong technologists and strong librarians. So do not be afraid to speak librarian items, because you can speak both techie and librarian. So some tips and tricks. Keep your support contacts up to date, but also use Equinox EDU. So when I post the slides up for you, you can get out the links. But we have a variety of events, the spotlights and so on, that are generally free and open for anybody to register. We have a set of written resources, and we also have a set of videos on Vimeo. So please keep our resources in mind as a supplement to the various things that you all have been putting up on the Evergreen's website. But also keep in mind that you are including out alone, because there's literally a global community of resources, including the Evergreen manual. And one of the nice things about Evergreen as a community is people talk to each other. So of course, later today, Katie Greenleaf Martin from the PALS group in Pennsylvania will be talking to you about political operations. And that's a thing that you keep in mind. Hey, if you ask an interesting enough question, you might even get a response from the country of it. So at this point, before I turn it over to Erica, are there any questions about what I've gone over, or Equinox's role as a partner to Missouri Evergreen?
We've been asked by our remote attendees, so if anyone asks the question here in the room, I will repeat the question as best I can so they can hear it, okay?
What are pickup offers?
Okay, what are pickup lockers is the question. Good question.
Yes.
All right, so the pickup lockers are machines provided by companies like Biblioteca, where a patron, where you can put an item in the locker. There are usually a bunch of cubbies, and the patron can scan their card and take the book out of the locker without having to talk to a real library staff. And many of your colleagues in the room will be able to give a better explanation of how that's working out in practice.
We put them out in the rural areas, and so it's like DoorDash for books and DVDs and stuff. They put it on hold. I drive clear out to Stella, which is only reachable by helicopter. They go pick it up at their little convenience store right there. They don't have to come all the way to Neosho. And I've got them in Diamond, Granby, and Stella, and it's changed the world in Newton County.
Thank you for that question. Anyone else? Terry,
I have 3 things I wanted to find out today, so I'm gonna ask it and you tell me if I'm gonna learn it somewhere else.
speak up real loud.
Okay, so, are you gonna talk about debt collect through Equinox, photos through Equinox, and credit card usage through Equinox?
You said that.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, yeah, so I can speak briefly about all 3. So as far as library data collection is concerned, Evergreen has an integration with the services provided by Unique Management. So if you choose to go with EOMS, all you need to say is we use Evergreen as our Equinox, and they will know how to work with us to deal with the technical communication on the scene. So as far as photos are concerned, patron photos, I assume. Yeah, so that is something that the Evergreen software does support. So, that is an option. There may be some IMI policy issues to discuss, because a photo of a person is kind of more automated, personally identifiable information. But it is something that the software can support, but also talk to you about. All right, and pardon me, what was
Credit card.
credit cards? Okay, so as far as credit cards is concerned, Evergreen has the ability to accept their payments. So depending on how you're doing it, if you have a machine provided by the likes of Biblioteca that takes credit cards at self-service or so on, you can tell Evergreen via SIP2. If you want to do something like have patrons be able to pay their fines via the OPAC, our technical recommendation is nowadays strongly to recommend using Stripe. So if you take out a Stripe subscription, Evergreen knows how to interact. Now, as far as any policy issues, thank you.
And Terry, there are libraries that are included that we take credit card payments both through on self checkout and through. Pam, do we do it through the website as well? No, not yet.
That's really, we already do take credit cards through. But it was really through the OPAC that I meant to add. That's what I was.
Just enabling it in the settings, isn't it?
Yeah, Evergreen can also authorize .NET, though for PCI compliance reasons nowadays, we actually do strongly recommend the Stripe. But if you do want to continue using authorized .NET, those.
But for the OPAC Stripe,
Yeah, for the OPAC,
Right.
definitely Stripe.
okay, that's what I wanted.
I'm using PayPal through the impact. PayPal, PayFlow Pro, authorized.net and Stripe.
Yep.
What other questions are there? Galen, thank you very much for your.
Thank everyone for being here, and I'd like to thank our families and colleagues that allowed for us to be here together as well. Maybe still need to speak up. I'm gonna try. So I wanted to go a little bit over the implementation process, because I know we have Katie online with us from Cape Girardeau. You're gonna get your proposed schedule next week, early next week. We already know that their go live is gonna be July 27th, but I wanted to highlight some of the changes we've been making to the implementation process over the last couple of years, because we have been listening to the feedback, and where feasible and sustainable, we've been implementing those changes into the process, trying to make it less overwhelming, more streamlined, and to just be an overall better experience. Lots of words. So I'm gonna go kind of through the different phases here and just make some highlights of some of the changes we've been making. If you are thinking about joining, I'm not entirely sure who's in the room, of who's thinking about joining, and we're getting ready to join. So I didn't want to just talk about some of the things we've been making, changes we've been making out of context. So with the pre-implementation kickoff, the priority for us is to do the initial assessment of the barcodes trying to come into your existing database for both patrons and items, to make the incoming libraries aware right away if they are looking at any kind of rebarcoding project, and if that needs to be considered in any of their grant applications. We also work with the Missouri Evergreen libraries to understand the current ILS contract when it ends. We don't want to get into a situation where the library's current ILS contract ends before they have a good 30-day sign off on their new production with us. We want to be able to compare data of the existing ILS with Missouri Evergreen to make sure we have those back and forths. Oh, actually, I do also want to mention that with rare exceptions, we do have our go lives on Thursdays. If anybody's ever wondered why we choose Thursday, Thursday gives us 2 full days of the work week with the libraries on their new system before the weekend begins. And we fully do anticipate that the load times are going to take as much time as we need for that one. And then at the kickoff, that's where we introduce ourselves, but we also make sure there aren't any other considerations that we need to be made aware of with the schedule, such as, is the library remodeling? Is somebody important to the migration? Have the library going to be away, maybe on vacation? We need to factor that into the schedule. Something that we've introduced that is new is once we agree on the day and time of the schedule, of course, there might be some exceptions there along the 3 or so month process. Somebody might have to reschedule. But what we've done is we've set our day and time. I get that on our calendars now, and everybody knows throughout the entire length of migration when their call is going to be, and they can have it on their calendars and they get reminders that way. So that's something a little bit new that's completely planned out now on everyone's. During the pre-testing phase, there's a lot going on. One new implementation is we now, if the current ILS has it available, we include the library's reading history. And this also brings up Terry's question about patron photos. That was previously not an option. Now there's more availability, but as Galen mentioned, that's something that needs to be worked out at the Missouri Evergreen level. But reading history is something that we could feasibly bring in if the legacy allows for it. I do want to quickly mention that reading history is not circulation history. If it is at all available to us, we might be able to work with the library to bring in some sort of history. But the circulation history from our perspective is not patron history. Another thing that we've introduced to the libraries is we have a sample of social media press releases if the libraries choose to use them. It's not formal press releases, it would be more for getting the word out on Facebook or Twitter, something that wouldn't need more of that official sign off. Another big change is the library setting mapping. I worked with Nikki, and Nikki passed it along to the board, is to reduce some of the library setting mapping. During the course of the migrations, the libraries are always welcome to ask us, hey, is this something that can be controlled with the library setting? I saw this in training, this looks a little different. How do we get this configured? So they're always welcome to let us know, but the initial mapping We've reduced some of that because some of the feedback was a bit overwhelming. So we've reduced some of that. I do still include mapping that have been introduced with new upgrades that are still relevant. A good example of that is St. Joseph is migrating their acquisitions, and there is a new library, 2 new library settings related to whether or not the library wants to use the price of an item or cost of an item. And that is something that would be very relevant to any libraries using acquisitions modules, so that needs to be accounted for. So anything that comes your way during an upgrade, I go back and assess, does that need to be something that's added moving forward? So I'm trying to keep that balance of not so many settings, but also keeping it relevant. Data mapping, there's a lot going on for the data mapping. Communication is the biggest key for the data mapping. It's just like when Galen was talking about the support, we need to hear from you. We need to hear these counts don't look right. I was expecting to see this code and I don't see it. These are all things that we need to know about. And sometimes the library has to combine some certain data that maybe we can break out in Evergreen. And so it's important for us to have those conversations and understand why are you using it this way? Is it something that you can do different? Is it something that you need to use moving forward? I do continue to refine the data mapping drop downs to make the process easier for the library. So for example, when they're mapping their patrons or their items, I included a drop down of what your actual current patron types and item types are. I'm also going through and making an initial assessment of what the incoming data looks like and making recommendations. They're just recommendations. We fully respect that this is the incoming library's data and it's their patrons, it's their items, it's their library. If they want to sign off on it or say, got this all wrong. But I'm at least going in there and giving an initial assessment of how this data can be mapped. So they're not just looking at a blank page trying to figure out how to fill it out. There's something there that can look at it and go, okay, I got it, and then start making their changes. So during this time, it's primarily for the test loads. So they've still got that full month of testing to make changes now that it's real and it's here and they can see it and they can play around with it and say, I think we need to make some adjustments. We've also added the ways to handle auto renewals. A lot of libraries have now implemented auto renewal, and it's pretty straightforward if you've never used auto renewal before and you're starting to use it. But if your legacy ILS allowed for auto renewals and you want to continue using auto renewals in Evergreen, we need to have that conversation of, okay, well, for the purposes of the migrating renewals, what data point do you want us to use? So that's been something new that we've had to do. And you also have a new patron privacy policy at NEC. I can't speak to it. I'll defer to Nikki any further of those conversations, but that has affected the way we might bring some data over or not over. The PM will continue to work with the libraries for their circulation and hold policies. This is usually a great time for the libraries to make policy changes. This is when they might decide to go fines free, or maybe they've talked with their board and have decided that we've done this. We're not quite sure why we do this anymore. So this is a time for us to make the change. We kind of jokingly say you have a little window of time to blame it on the new ILS for new changes. So as we get ready to pass the test load report, I did want to highlight that the data analyst and the project manager have quite a bit of a back and forth with each other before we actually release the test database to the librarians. We have the data load report shows us a lot, and we've been refining those load reports too, so they've morphed over time. So depending on how new you are, your maps might have looked different than what they currently look like. But we'll take a look and go, wait a minute, that says 2 renewals, and nobody should have a renewal on that, or what's that patron? So we have back and forths with each other to try to cover those higher surface level issues that we're seeing right away before we pass it to the libraries. We're also now adding the DNS records to both test and production. I think that's fairly new. And now here begins the test review itself. this is highly important for the libraries to be as interactive as possible. And this also goes back to what Galen was saying about please don't suffer in silence. I feel like maybe the circulators suffer in silence more than their share. And so for the testing phase is a minimum of 4 weeks. With very rare exceptions, we might have to expedite that. That's not ideal. That's not ideal at all. We want the libraries to have 4 full weeks. During that time, you're also going to be getting some training and a few other asks of the incoming library, such as OPAC bigs, notices, things like that. But the more staff members that can be involved in testing, the overall success of the project. There is a direct correlation between the interactiveness during the testing phase and the success of the go live day. It's not failed. That correlation always stands true. And so the other thing that we've noticed is as many staff as possible that can be involved in testing, that gives them some additional hands-on training, but it also puts them more at ease during the go live day. So we highly encourage as many staff that can get their hands into the test database where they're going to catch things. Your cert that are day in, day out, they're going to know. They know their patrons, they know what to look for, and they're going to be able to tell us. The final extract. So with the initial extract, it's all the files all at once for the test load. With the final extract, we do that in 2 phases. The first is going to be the final bibliographic and item extract. If you're including acquisitions, serials, authorities, that would be applicable to that first part of the final extract. And the final bibliographic record and item extract occurs a week and a half before the go live. That's when the incoming library's cataloging freeze begins. The existing Missouri Evergreen libraries are not in any kind of freeze. You're not. So, you might see that the incoming library's bib records appear first before their items do. So you might have some questions about why did we just see this influx of empty bibliographic records? And that is because the way we perform the final load is that the data analyst will load the bibliographic records first, and then he can go back in and attach the items. So if you've noticed that all of a sudden you see about 70 or so thousand bib records, hopefully not that, and then you see the items, that is why we have to systematically load. But you in the existing Missouri Evergreen libraries aren't in that freeze. That's only pertaining to the migrated library. Another huge enhancement is Rogan has been really working with Missouri Evergreen to help refine the record deduplication process. And some of the highlights here, he has identified new ways to analyze those matches and per character normalization. And another big one for us is he's been able to speed up the deduplication process. Because like I said, he has to load those bibliographic records in before he can load the items. That takes a week. By that next week, we have 3 days to load the patrons, holds, certs, all the rest. So it's critical that we keep our timeline set.
Can Liz tell everybody what our match rate for Mississippi County was?
I think it was 72.
72%, which is, I don't know if you
That's
guys,
unheard of.
that is, my heart started racing and I jumped for joy literally.
I believe our St. Joseph rates are going to be about the same.
That's incredible, you guys. We are used to between
40 and 60.
40, yeah.
So we saw marked improvements with the deduplication rate and the process that we have to go through. I don't think this applies to y'all, but back in the day, we actually had to wait until after the library was live to deduplicate the records. So that we got all of them in and then we could take them out. So the process over the years has really smoothed out for us. But yes, through the enhancements that Rogan has been working with Missouri Evergreen folks, the Mississippi's recent percentage was 70%. The second phase of the final extracts is the patron, final patron records, open circulations, bills, hold, reading history, all of the rest of that data. That's when the incoming library starts their patron freeze and they are no longer using their legacy ILS Some libraries might choose to use a read only. That's not typical. You can, if you don't. The other good thing about having the two separate extracts for that final load is your patrons. That patron freeze, that's the most visible part of all of this to your patrons. They're not going to have access to their OPAC accounts for those 3 days. So we do want to minimize how long that the patrons don't have access to that OPAC account. Yeah, it is up to you if you want to leave your OPAC in read-only mode, your staff client in read-only mode. It's not typical. So the library is not checking any items in for those 3 days, they're setting them aside. And they can use offline mode. And I want to mention here with offline mode, some libraries do opt to close for those 3 days. That's not typical. And Equinox does not, I don't want to use this word, but we don't require any part of your migration to have a library closure. We fully understand and respect that for a library closure, you have city, state, local, all those requirements that you might have to go through, so that we don't want to potentially put that on anyone. If you were to close for any day during the migration, we would actually recommend that you close during the circulation training so you could get as many people as possible to attend. Have it more of like a staff development day, but we don't, during the process, we don't require anybody to close. Go live day, this is gonna make some of y'all happy. We've implemented a new policy of holding a go live day call. So that is usually in the afternoon, just to make sure that everything is going okay. And we've learned through this process, through just the normal interaction, that they'll say, oh, hey, you know, this happened, and it'll be kind of anecdotal. It's like, wait a minute, that wasn't supposed to happen. So it's been a really good feature that we've added in there, and it just gives everyone, Missouri Evergreen staff, all of us, a sense of how things are really going. And we can, I think during Mississippi's Go Live Day call, one of the staff members came in and did a little dance, and we're like, okay, it's all good. So it's been a great implementation of that. Missouri Evergreen staff, I didn't want to go without mentioning what Missouri Evergreen has also implemented, bringing in mentors and MEC staff to be on site and help the libraries on their Go Live day. So that's been something that Nikki and the MEC staff have been working on. So that shouldn't go without. We also now, in addition to our phone calls and the migration list, we also now offer test issue, production issue sheets that we can communicate and track any issues. We can assign who's working on it, what the status of it is. So that's just another method of being able to communicate with us is what's happening. Post-production phase, this might be a little bit new to some of the libraries that migrated before Equinox services, is the library gets to decide when they want to start resource sharing. I think before the library started on that Go Live day, the libraries can, but if they want to wait a couple of weeks, they have that option available to them. The advantage to waiting a couple of weeks is it allows for staff to have time to acclimate to the new software before we then add the courier into play. The consideration to be made there is patrons might have questions. I thought you migrated to Missouri Evergreen and now I have to wait. Yes, you're waiting for a couple more weeks and then it will be the world is yours. So that's a little bit of a communication thing, and that can go back to how you represent social media services. The 30-day sign off, it's usually more than 30 days. We don't include weekends and we don't include any Equinox closures. If the 30 days lands on like somewhere in the middle of the week, we push it out to that Friday. Even then, it depends on what's going on with the migration. We're not going to just toss everyone off to support. We're going to have a plan of action to get things resolved. If it's something that is more complicated, we might need to open up a ticket, assign somebody from the migration team to that ticket. But then from there, you are moved over to the Equinox support team. As Galen mentioned, you get to have up to 3 technical contacts that are your primary contacts to work with support. Kind of flew through that. I think that's pretty good timing, but Are there any questions?
Any questions for Erica, either on the implementation and post-implementation? Most of you probably didn't know this information, and so I'm really glad that Erica had a chance to review it for us, because this is what your fellow Evergreen libraries are experiencing right now, like Mississippi County and Nevada will, and of course, St. Joseph and Morgan County. So I think having that bit of empathy for our colleagues as they come into this process is really helpful, because it is stressful. Some of you have been through it, right? You've been through the actual implementation. Some of you are new enough that you haven't seen it. It's a very difficult process, and I really respect the fact that we have a great vendor partner that really helps us succeed in those migrations. It's the only way we've been able to do so many of them so quickly. Thank you very much, Eric.